Houtini everybody, and welcome to the fourth part of the Jawa making series, how to make a Jawa hood. There are going to be some things that you're going to need before you can start on this project. First and foremost is going to be the piece of fabric that we've cut out and laid aside for the hood at the very beginning, some black fabric to line it, a snap to close the hood, a large piece of craft foam. This is just the thin foam that you can buy at a craft store. Some wire. This is like Cat 5 cable or Ethernet cord. You can find this pretty much anywhere. You're going to need a hot glue gun. I recommend a high temperature hot glue gun. You're also going to need your sewing machine, some high strength upholstery thread, and some sharp scissors. First thing you're going to want to do is lay out your monk's cloth and clean up any raggedy edges like this one over here. The back is going to be okay because we're actually going to be sewing that together. What I like to do is I actually leave one of these finished edges on the fabric I'm going to be using for the hood. That way when I insert the wire, the way that it's made, it won't fray there at the face, and I'll show you what I mean by that. But first of all, lay this out, clean up the edges, and then you're going to lay your piece of black cloth over that and cut it out in a similar shape and size. I'll show you what I mean in a second. Alright, now that I've evened up the sides of the hood fabric, I laid out the piece of black fabric on top of it to make the lining. As you can see, I've cut it a little bit smaller than the actual hood itself because the hood is actually going to get smaller as we sew it. So you're going to want to give yourself about 2 inches on the front, and that's right here on this finished edge, and then about the same amount on the back because that's where the hem is going to go in the back. And then here on either side, that's actually going to be a fray edge, so you can leave it a little bit longer on those sides. Basically, just the middle has to be black. That way you have a nice even lining. Also, just a reminder, save all of your scraps because in a later video when I show you how to make the boots, you're going to be using all of these little scraps for those. The first thing that we're going to sew is going to be the channel that the wire goes in. This wire is going to help the hood stay a nice round shape while it's framing your face and your mask. And so we want to give it a good space to feed it through since it can be a little bit tricky getting it through this channel. So here you can see I'm using the finished edge. I'm going to sew all the way down the front of the hood at about, I'd say, 1 inch in. This is going to be the only stitch on this project that we're going to use a straight stitch for. So my straight stitch is still number 1, but I'm just going to make it the loosest zig that I can so that it is essentially a straight line. Alright, now that that channel is sewn, you can see there's a nice pocket all the way down to the other side of the hood that we'll be able to put the cable in, and then it'll hold it tight. Alright, this next step is completely optional. You do not have to do this. It's just something that I prefer to do with my Jawas, and that is adding foam to the middle of the hood where your head is going to be. And the reason you would want to do this is so that it will distribute the fabric around your head evenly without making it slouch. The way we're going to install it is I'm going to be using hot glue. I recommend high temp because that won't melt against your scalp. And we're just gonna put enough hot glue on here to hold it in place, but not enough that it's going to soak through the monk's cloth and come out through the other side. So just enough to hold it in place. Alright, so I tacked down this whole front. You can sort of see it through the foam there. So now I'm just going to tack down a little bit on the sides and a little bit on the back, and then this will be good to go. We don't want to put too much glue on this because we don't want it to get stiff. We just want it to add that nice round shape to our hood when we wear it. Now I'm going to lay out the black fabric liner over top of the piece of foam, and I'm going to glue it in as well. Now that the lining is glued in and secured, you can start to see that it's beginning to look a lot like an actual hood. When we hold it up, you can see that it holds its shape, and that this is even before you put any wire, but it's ready for the wire as soon as you put it in. You can barely see that one straight stitch, so it looks really good. Also, there's going to be no fraying where we sewed it on that finished edge there, so it looks really good so far. All right, so next part is the ties, the ones that go around your neck and tie in the back of the hood. And remember when I said to save all your scraps? Well, these scraps right here from where I cut out the body of the Jawa are going to turn into the 2 ties that we're going to use for our hood. I'm going to go ahead and cut out about 2.5 foot strips, and then I'll show you what we do from there. All right, now that I've cut out my 2 strips, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a zigzag stitch along the entirety of both of them because these are going to have the teeny tiniest bit of fray on them. We're not going to want to put the zigzag stitch in too far, maybe only 1/4 inch. All right, now that we have a zigzag stitch all the way down the ties, we're going to set these aside for when we're ready to attach them to the hood. The next step is to turn your hood inside out and then even this part up. And then you're going to sew along this line right here to create the back of the hood. Here's the front and here's the back. The back, you can turn it right side out, and you can see here is the point of the hood, and here is going to be where it drapes over your head. And so you have a functioning hood. The next thing we're going to do is sew the ties onto the hood itself, and then we'll insert the wire and then do the fray hem at the bottom. So there are a couple of different ways that you can attach the ties for your Jawa hood. One of them is coming straight forward from the chin of the hood, and the other one is coming straight down. There really isn't a right or wrong way when it comes to these 2 ways. This is just a personal preference of mine. All of the Jawas that I've built have been made this way, so I'm just going to keep doing it. I'll show you here how to attach it in just a second. You can see I have trimmed a little bit of the excess from the bottom because it was looking a little bit too long. What I ended up doing was trimming it and then tucking the tie underneath some of this black lining, and now I'm going to create a box around it by doing some stitches. I'm going to do that to the other side as well, and then we'll be ready for our fray hem. All right, now both ties are sewn on. So the next thing we're going to do is measure this area here so that we can cut our wire, and then we will insert it and then make the fray hem. Now the fray hem is going to start right here at the very end and then go all the way around, and this hem will also hold the wire in place inside the hood. All right, so now that I've measured and cut out my wire, the next thing I'm going to want to do is put a little bit of electrical tape on either ends of my wire here, just because they are somewhat sharp because of the insides, and I don't want it to poke through the monk's cloth. So as you can see, the addition of the wire improves the shape so much. It looks so good. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to put a stitch along this area right here so that it holds the wire in, and it gives us a nice fray edge down here. So put the foot of your sewing machine at the very base of the wire, and then we're going to sew all the way around to the other end of the hood where the other wire is. The bottom fray hem is done. You're going to want to pick your frays. Make sure that they are no longer than 1/2 inch at the very longest. If they tend to get too long, you can trim them down. You'll also want to clip off any of these long frays like this since they're not approvable. The very last step is going to be sewing on a snap so that you can close the bottom of your hood at the chin, and that will require some hand sewing. So I'll go ahead and link the tutorial that I did in our last video on how to hand sew a snap. All right, now with the snap installed, you're ready to move on to the next step. Join us in the next video for how to make the glowing-eyed Jawa mask.